So over the years of producing videos on this channel, we've certainly talked about watches under $1,000 before in a few different ways, multiple different ways. But strangely enough, we've never made a video about some of the top dress watches under $1,000 specifically. We've looked at dive watches, we've looked at other sports-oriented watches, but I think this goes to show that dress watches oftentimes are forgotten about compared to some of these other genres in watchmaking. This all said, there are some fantastic, elegant watches under $1,000 to choose from, so we're going to look at those in this video. How this is gonna be broken down though, all of these watches have to be under $1,000 at retail prices. We're also going to kick off the top of this video with some micro brands because I do think there are some suitable micro brands that should be considered, and they bring some things to the table that I would argue most larger scale brands might not be able to compete on, or are testing out different movement concepts or specifications that allow them to separate from the crowd. These watches obviously have to be suitable for more formal environments. Most of these watches are going to be mechanical, but quartz is still worthy of consideration here. And I'm really trying to narrow my focus and being ultra precise on what I think are truly some of the best watches under $1,000 in the dress category. Now, before we look at these watches, one thing I wanna mention is we have a holiday gift guide on our website. If you're late to shopping for that loved one in your life, or maybe yourself, maybe that loved one is you, we don't judge here if that's the case, all good. Check out our holiday gift guide in the description down below. This has a lot of top picks, dozens and dozens of picks from our team looking at a variety of different price ranges. So we have this broken down in several different price categories. So if you have a certain budget in mind for a watch this holiday season, you can look at that. I will warn you though, we are getting close to this end of holiday season. So if you are going to look at one of these, definitely act fast so you can make sure you can get it under the tree this holiday season. While you're looking at that complete holiday guide, we also have some running promos going on our website, including discounts on straps. And we have some phenomenal gifts with purchase right now. I'm talking about buying a certain marathon watch, you get a free watch with your purchase. Also complimentary coffee table books and a lot more. If you're interested in this, check out the links down below, and also happy holidays to all of you. So to kick things off, we're going to look at a micro brand from my home state of Ohio, actually the other side of the state though, looking at the Cincinnati Watch Company, known as their Guild Mechanical is the version that we're looking at here. So just a little bit of some background on Cincinnati Watch Company. Now, Cincinnati as a region and a city in the United States is a Midwestern town based in Southwest Ohio, but also back in the day, it was known to be the home of Gruen Watch Company, which was one of the largest producers of mechanical watches in the United States back in the day. You may have heard this brand before because Sean Connery, in the first James Bond film, he wore a Gruen Precision in Dr. No in 1962. All this to say is that Ohio, as well as Cincinnati, had a voice in the watchmaking industry in the 20th century. And what Cincinnati Watch Company aims to do is to uphold many of the principles of previous mechanical watchmaking in the region and push it forward into the 21st century. The co-owner and in-house watchmaker, Jordan Ficklin, was actually a WOSTEP graduate and was also the executive director of the American Watchmakers and Clockmakers Institute, teaching watchmaking in the process. So that was just right up the road, close to Cincinnati, and it's a great organization in the United States. So you're getting a true watchmaker at the helm here, and the watch itself, very attractive, and a few things that come to the table I wanted to call out and why it's included in this. Now, looking at the diameter, 38 millimeters, thickness just over 10 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug of 43 millimeters. You have this central dial pattern that's very beautiful, 50 meters of water resistance, and a manual caliber on the inside, but this is an Labore grade Sellita SW210. At $595, you're getting an Labore grade Swiss movement on the inside while being assembled by an in-house watchmaker in the United States. This is a pretty cool offer, and I love the fact that they share my home state. I wanted to give them a quick mention right at the top. Looking at another micro brand, but on the whole other side of the world, we have Kuo Kyoto with their Oldsmith 90-007. So this is a small seconds, classic 1950s style design, a beautiful looking watch. It does have a Miyota caliber on the inside. If you're not familiar with this brand, they're founded in 2020. They're based in Kyoto, and they actually have a workshop, and they do their assembly and testing in that workshop in Kyoto. I think it's open to the public as well, so if you are passing through Kyoto, you can go and see some of their watches. And what they're really focused on is this mid 20th century design. Find a lot of inspiration from British watchmaking over the years and creating form factor that is going to be also of that era. You look at the diameter here of 35 millimeters, lug to lug of 35 millimeters, 50 meters of water resistance, automatic Miyota 82S5 on the inside, sapphire crystal. I think you get the idea. These watches wear larger than you might suspect, so don't get too scared away, but these are going to, of course, be small pieces. Another interesting point is that these hands are apparently heat treated hands, and for this price point, pretty ridiculous. You're going to mostly see synthetic painting happening as a way to achieve that. But if these are being tempered blue hands as they're quoting, that's pretty remarkable for a watch that's under $1,000. Now we have a fan favorite under $1,000 from the micro independent sphere with the Baltic MR01. So Baltic is based in Paris. I would argue that they're one of the most influential micros independents to come out in the last 5 to 10 years. And this watch is bringing some things to the table that I would argue most larger scale brands are not going to attempt. Now on the inside, you're getting a micro rotor movement, and it's the Chinese micro rotor movement that looks fantastic, but a micro rotor movement under $1,000, that is not something you're going to see from a major brand. 36 millimeters for the diameter, so much smaller case, thickness of 9.9 millimeters, lug to lug of 44 millimeters, acrylic glass to fit the form of the vintage throwback. And I think the star of the show is going to be that dial texture. This looks absolutely phenomenal as you get up closer. And then one final micro I want to mention here is Sternglass with the Naus Automatic. So this is a German brand that was started just in 2016, but have quickly scaled their production. And it probably is the #1 answer to the Bauhaus design that you're going to find for brands like a Junghans, and then maybe some inspiration with a brand like a Nomos. But how can you get it for under $500? This is the brand that I commonly recommend. You have a 38 millimeter diameter, 12 millimeters in thickness, 43 millimeter lug to lug, 50 meters of water resistance, and a Miyota caliber on the inside. They do have the Pro version, which is going to have the 9 series Miyota calibers with that 4 hertz beat rate. This is going to have a 3 hertz beat rate of the 8215, so just keep that in mind, but still a very reliable movement. I think Sternglass has been able to find this delicate balance between having an answer to some of the higher end brands that go for this style, while not being a carbon copy of those watches, and having something that feels a little more authentic and carefully designed that also I could recognize. I've seen people wearing these out and about, and I'm like, oh, that's a Sternglass. And this is one of those brands too that whenever you show it to somebody that's not into watches, it somehow just like has this quick click in their brain where it's like, that looks nice. They're well-designed pieces for prices that make a ton of sense for under $500 in this instance. Now we move to the big boys. We're looking at some of the larger brands, and this was the first watch that comes to mind under $1,000 for a dress watch. Not to say it's the best dress watch under $1,000, but probably one of the most popular. It's a no-brainer pick. We have the Seiko Cocktail Time family. A lot of different ones you can think about. You can think about the SRPBs, the 4.3, the 4.1, the 7.7. You have also the SRPD 3.7, many different options to choose from here. You also have 38 millimeter cases as well, something like the SRPE 4.1 that is known as the Negroni. So it's a 38 millimeter case, so I'll throw that out there as well. But most of the designs you're going to see from the Cocktail Time family are going to be at that 40.5 millimeter diameter, thickness of 11.8 millimeters, and that lug to lug of 47.5 millimeters. So these are not small watches, but they are going to work on a wide variety of wrists. 50 meters of water resistance, automatic 4R35 movement on the inside. So that's a date version of the 4R family. The date is going to be positioned at 3 o'clock. The Cocktail Time family was first developed in 2010, and it came with this idea of inspiration looking at Japanese cocktails. They looked specifically at Shibuya, Tokyo. It was a mixologist that they work with to design these different dials. And you have this fine rib texture for many of them. That's been this defining idea of these designs that looks simply fantastic as you look up close with this wide selection of colors to choose from. I was tempted to mention this as part of the previous collection, but this feels like a totally different proposition, so I'm going to include it as a second watch. So Cocktail Time family again, but how about a GMT? These were just released in 2024, so some new pieces here. I'm gonna call attention to the SSK 037. So this is that light blue, so think about blue with maybe some infusion of silver undertones in the process. You're looking at under $600. You have the 4R34 movement. I don't know if people are necessarily asking for a dress GMT, but strangely, this watch works better than I would have anticipated. It doesn't have the seamless integration like that of the Seiko 5 Sports, but still works in my opinion. 40.5 millimeters with the diameter, so staying true there. 12.8 millimeters in thickness, lug to lug of 47.5 millimeters. So keeping the form factor and wearability in mind while adding a GMT in the process. Now, another brand that absolutely needs to be mentioned here, we have a couple watches I'm going to showcase looking at dress pieces from the brand. We have Tissot. Of a dress watch from Switzerland, Tissot is on a short list, no question about it. One of the watches to mention is the Lock. The Lock is the city in Switzerland that Tissot calls home with their global headquarters. And this is one of the important pillars of the brand. I know a lot of the attention goes to things like the PRX or maybe the C-Star collection, but the Lock is right there when you're talking about a global marketplace and what is going to sell the best for the brand and also is the most beloved. So the principles of reliability in a simple take and having this mass appeal is going to be there with the lock. You're getting an 80-hour power reserve movement, pretty solid wearing dimensions, but where these watches start to differentiate from some of the other watches on this list is going to be the classical elements and details. You have this attractive guilloche style dial pattern that's going to be at the center of the showcase here. It's going to be achieved by press, but still looks nice. Also going to see some incorporation of Roman numerals, which is surprising because I don't see that many brands looking at Roman numerals compared to more linear markings or applied raised markings in more traditional form nowadays. That feels like the more modern and safe way to go about it. But by going this route, you're starting to get a piece that separates from some of the others that you can consider in this price range. The lock is also going to be one of the most inexpensive mechanical watches that you can get from Tissot at retail. So if the lock is more of the design that's catering towards these romantic, you have the Romans, you have the guilloche pattern, that's going to be looking back to the past, what is the representation of more of a modern dress watch from Tissot? I would say that is the Chemin de Tourelle. This was recently updated last year, now with a 39mm case. You do have a couple versions of dial configurations. You have a Roman numeral dial set, but I think the one that most people now will associate with the Chemin de Tourelle is going to be those linear markings, which are faceted attractively, and also reminds me slightly of how the Tissot Gentleman has those markers that really stand out. With that 39mm diameter, you're getting 11.2mm in thickness and a lug-to-lug pretty compact for its diameter at 43.7mm, 50 meters of water resistance. You have the Powermatic 80 on the inside, sapphire crystal, different dial colors to choose from. I would go with the blue dial. That's probably my personal favorite of this configuration. I actually gifted one of these watches to my college roommate when he was getting married, just because I liked the dial so much and I thought it was a great suitable choice if you're looking at a watch under $1,000 for a more dressy scenario. Another aspect of these pieces that I love is going to be the double finish on the hand. So you have one side that's going to be blasted and the other side that's going to be polished. This is evoking more of this high-end type of approach, I think, of the Vacheron Traditionnel on a budget, basically. So you can't get this piece under $1,000 anymore with the automatic configuration, but even for a quartz piece, I think it stands out because it is an icon of design. We have the Junghans Max Bill Quartz. This was a watch that I would not be in front of you right now if it wasn't for the Max Bill design. This was my gateway in many aspects to fine watchmaking. I remember seeing some Seikos, I remember Timexes, but then when I saw this, it started to open up my view into what I liked as a collector, and the design of this piece just spoke to me immediately. You have this minimalist style, but the typeface, the design, the use of space is all so beautiful. The way that Max Bill was able to incorporate all this to have a highly legible and functional design with this beautiful array of information is something I really can't even put to words, that I've been trying to put to words for years. It just speaks to me on a level that many designs in the industry just can't. The history of this goes back to the mid-20th century, where Max Bill was commissioned to make a kitchen wall clock for Junghans, and then after the success of that, shifted to making a mechanical watch for the brand and adapting it to a wristwatch design. Another thing that I have found with these watches is there's probably no other piece in the history of my ownership of watches where I have received more compliments than a Max Bill design. There's just something where this bridges the gap between collector and non-collector that makes it easy to understand. The language of design does not have any borders. It is something that can be understood by every eye, and I think good design is good design, and I think that's why the Max Bill still succeeds to this day in being able to touch so many different people when it comes to how it's able to deliver a package that makes sense for both those collectors as well as people that are maybe novices to the entire idea of watch collecting. Now we shift into Orient. Now there are many Orient watches that you could consider here, but let's be real. The watch that I'm gonna mention here is the Orient Bambino, but let's talk about a new Orient Bambino, the 38mm, now with small seconds. So we saw the 38mm Bambino finally become available in the last couple of years. This year is where they rolled out the 38mm small seconds. Now this is not the first time the Bambino has been available in the small seconds, but it's the first time at 38mm it's going to be available. So take the Generation 2 version 2 Bambino that actually was the watch that I owned and was the watch that was featured on this channel in the first video. I think the first watch ever to appear on this channel was that watch, Gen 2 version 2. Take that design and then infuse a small seconds into the package. Now you have the Bambino 38mm small seconds. For the diameter, 38.4mm, the thickness, 12mm, lug to lug of 44mm, getting 30 meters of water resistance, and mineral glass on top. Different dial colors to choose from. You have a black with a white subdial, you have a gold tone with a silver dial, or a cream/ivory dial to choose from. This is just one option within the Bambino family. There are plenty others to choose from, but at the current moment, I think this is the most complete form of the Bambino in the current lineup. I like the 38 millimeters and how they wear compared to some of the larger case sizes. It just feels more appropriate for a dress watch, and these watches tend to wear a little bit larger than the proposed diameter because of how large that dial opening is. This next watch is one that is in this weird middle ground of everyday and dress. It doesn't have quite the water resistance rating that I might say it's more of that type of category of everyday, but it is going to infuse a couple ideas here that separates from most of the other watches on this list. This is the Mido Multifort Patrimony. I love the way this watch looks. It has elegance, it has some concept of sensible casual attire that can be worn with it. It's one of the more attractive watches that Mido makes, but most people just think of the Ocean Stars and not much else from the brand. This is one of the highlights that I think is one of their best pieces under $1,000. You no longer can get their Baroncellis under $1,000 on a bracelet, so this feels like a better option to go for. You have the sector dial design, 40 millimeter diameter, 12.2 millimeters in thickness, lug to lug of 47 millimeters, nice design lugs to go along with that. It has this very attractive silhouette when you put it on the wrist, but also just looking at it as an object still has the same effect. 50 meters of water resistance and an automatic C07.621 on the inside that comes with 80 hours of power reserve, Nivacron balance spring on the inside, sapphire crystal on top, and a watch with those syringe hands that is a little unlike anything else on this list thus far. So now we look at Hamilton, and there are a few different Hamilton watches that came to mind. The Intramatic Champagne was just discontinued, so that didn't feel like it was a good eligible pick for this video. Then you also have the Hamilton American Classic Bolton Edition, which for a rectangular style case under $1,000 is in pretty rare form. There's not many square cases or rectangular cases under $1,000, but with the quartz construction and I think some of the pricing and positioning, that might not be worthy of being classified as the best, but is certainly an honorable mention when looking under $1,000. Where I would look at for Hamilton here now, given the current landscape of what the brand has on offer for dress watches, I would look at the Jazzmaster Automatic. So this is just under $1,000 on a bracelet. I mean, just under. We're $995 here. You have 40 millimeters of diameter, thickness of 11.2 millimeters, and a lug to lug of 47 millimeters. The H10 movement is on the inside, 80 hours of power reserve. That's the C07.611 Nivacron balance spring, traditional metallic escapement components, 50 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal. You have a few different dial colors to choose from. Here we're looking at the champagne dial, which does have more of this throwback to the 1950s where this name did originate in the first place. Also, the finishing on the bracelet is quite good. You have these polished interior points and exterior points of that bracelet on that multi-link design, and still would look exceptional on a strap, but many dress watches sometimes look off on a bracelet. This is not one of those pieces. And now for the final watch on this list, it's actually the least expensive watch on this list as well, the Timex Marlin hand winding. So this is a $200 watch, 34 millimeter case, 10 millimeters of thickness, and a lug to lug of 41 millimeters. So think about that. That came out in 2017. Think about what was going on in 2017. This was before some of the Tudor Black Bay 58 came out. This is not right when the craze of vintage revival was happening at its very peak. It was definitely happening, but to see this watch from Timex at this case size, a 34 millimeter case size, at this time was not something anybody was expecting. And also seeing a hand-winding mechanical watch to go on top of it. This was one of the pieces that helped shift the way many thought about Timex in the 21st century. Now, Timex has this long history of producing mechanical watches, and at the time where the original Timex Marlin was on shelves in the 1960s, the brand was one of the largest producers of watches in the entire world. But this opened the floodgates to where you saw Timex incorporating other mechanical and automatic designs within their catalog. You went from basically having 0 mechanical watches to dozens and dozens of different designs in the years to follow. Shortly thereafter, they came out with the automatic 40 millimeter Marlin, and after that, never looked back. And even looking at this watch within the confines of this list and how it's able to separate, a lot of things that it's bringing to the table that will make it different from the rest of the bunch. Much smaller for its case diameter. The retro style design with the numerals. This is so 1960s in how they look and are presented. And also it's going to have this absence of color, but not feeling dull in the process. This is still a very lively and playful design, despite the very monochromatic look that it is presenting. But all right, guys, that is our list here today, looking at some of the best dress watches under $1,000. Are there some other dress watches that you would consider that I did not touch on in this video? I'm sure there are, so leave some comments down below. Love to hear some personal ownership stories as well. What are some dress watches that you would recommend? Also, if you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. I don't just say that, that really does help out the channel, so I do appreciate it. Also check out teddybaldestar.com and that gift guide if you are in the market for a new watch, or someone in your family or a loved one, a friend, anybody's in the market for a watch, check out teddybaldestar.com. Every purchase from teddybaldestar.com supports the content that we're producing here, but also on top of that, you're getting a full factory warranty for all the products that we sell, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support. And if you have any questions throughout the holiday season, we're working around the clock, have 18 hours a day, live chat, one of my team members. That is not an automated message. Those are real people that you can talk to about any watch on our site. So feel free to reach out to us as well. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.